In the year 2187, Earth was broken. The air was thick with smoke and dust. Rivers ran dry or filled with poison. Cities that once sparkled with light now lay in ruins, swallowed by floods, fires, or war. People fought over clean water, over scraps of food, over patches of land that could still grow something. Hope had become a rare thing, like a single green leaf in a desert. Then, one quiet night, the sky changed. It started with a soft hum, too low for most ears to hear. Birds stopped singing. Dogs lifted their heads. Then far above the clouds, lights appeared, not stars, not planes, but something new. They moved slowly, silently, glowing with a pale blue light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Within hours, every screen on Earth showed the same image. 5 great ships shaped like smooth shells or folded petals, hanging in orbit like silent guardians. No one attacked. No one fired a missile. There was no warning, no demand, no threat. Instead, a voice came, not in any human language, but in a sound that somehow everyone understood. It was calm, gentle, and full of sorrow. "We have watched you," the voice said. "We have seen your pain. We come not to take, but to give." The world held its breath. The beings called themselves the Kailari. They looked unlike anything humans had imagined. Tall and slender, with skin that shimmered like moonlight on water, they moved with quiet grace. Their eyes were large and deep, filled with a sadness that seemed older than stars. They did not land in capitals or demand meetings with leaders. Instead, their ships drifted over the worst hit places, over drowned coastlines, over burning forests, over refugee camps where children coughed from dirty air. From their vessels, they released thousands of small seed-like pods. These pods fell gently to the ground, opened, and began to work. Some cleaned the air, pulling out poison and turning it into clean oxygen. Others sank into the soil, healing it, waking up dead roots and making plants grow again. In oceans, floating devices broke down plastic and brought back fish. In hospitals, tiny machines repaired damaged lungs, healed radiation burns, and even reversed some diseases that had no cure. No one asked for payment. No contracts were signed. The Kailari simply gave. At first, many people did not trust them. "Nothing is free," said generals and politicians. "They must want something." But days passed, then weeks, and the Kailari asked for nothing. They did not take resources. They did not demand land. They did not even speak unless spoken to. They only watched, helped, and waited. Slowly, people began to believe. In Nairobi, a boy who had never seen rain drank from a clean stream for the first time. In Mumbai, a grandmother breathed without coughing. In the Amazon, trees that had been cut down for decades began to sprout new leaves from old stumps. Farmers cried as their fields turned green again. Fishermen pulled silver fish from waters that had been empty for years. World leaders tried to thank the Kailari, but the beings only bowed their heads. "You do not owe us," they said. "Your survival is enough." But humans are not built to accept gifts without giving something back. For centuries, human life had been based on trade. This for that, eye for an eye, favor for favor. To be given kindness with no strings felt strange, almost wrong. Still, for now, the world chose to accept it. Children drew pictures of the Kailari and hung them in schools. Poets wrote songs about the sky angels. Scientists studied the pods not to copy them, but to understand the love behind them. For the first time in a long time, people looked up at the night sky not with fear but with wonder. The United Nations, once a place of shouting and blame, held a silent meeting. No one argued. No one walked out. They simply sat together and watched a live feed from orbit, where a Kailari ship gently released a cloud of light over the Sahara, turning sand into soil. In that moment, Earth felt whole again, not because the damage was gone, but because someone had cared enough to try to fix it. Years later, historians would call this time the quiet miracle. But in 2187, people didn't need big words. They just needed clean water, fresh air, and a reason to believe tomorrow could be better. And for the first time in generations, it was. The Kailari stayed in orbit, silent and steady, like stars that had finally come close enough to touch. They did not speak of debt. They did not speak of return. They only gave, and in doing so, reminded humanity of something it had almost forgotten. That kindness exists, even in the darkest corners of the universe, but deep down in the hearts of many, a question began to grow, a small quiet seed of worry. If the Kailari gave so much, what would happen when they finally asked for something in return? For now, though, the world healed, and for now that was enough. 10 years passed. Earth was no longer broken. The air smelled of rain and green leaves. Rivers ran clear. Forests grew where deserts once spread. Cities rose again, not with steel and smoke, but with gardens on rooftops and clean energy humming in the walls. Children played outside without masks. Old people walked without coughing. It was a world reborn, and yet something was wrong. At first, no one could name it. Life was good, better than it had been in centuries. But in quiet moments, in late-night talks, or in the eyes of old soldiers, a feeling grew. It was not fear, not anger, but something heavier. Guilt. The Kalari still watched from orbit. Their ships glowed softly in the night sky like silent guardians. They never asked for anything. They never even landed again after the first year. They simply stayed, helping from afar, fixing what broke, healing what hurt. But humans could not forget what they owed. In schools, children learned about the great gift. In museums, the first Kalari pod was displayed under glass, glowing faintly. On holidays, people left flowers or small handmade tokens on hilltops facing the sky, as if to say thank you. But thanks did not feel like enough. Why did they do it? Asked a young engineer in Tokyo, staring at a Kalari device that purified seawater. No one gives everything for nothing. Her teacher had no answer. Governments tried to send messages of gratitude. They offered Earth's art, music, even samples of soil and water. The Kalari accepted them politely, but always replied the same way. Your life is our reward. That answer should have brought peace. Instead, it brought unease. Because humans knew their own history. They remembered wars started over small debts. They remembered empires that gave food today and took land tomorrow. They remembered promises that turned into chains. So how could this be real? How could a whole alien race save a dying world? And ask for nothing? Doubt crept in like a slow fog. In secret rooms beneath mountains, military leaders met. What if it's a trick? One general said. What if they're waiting for us to get strong? Then take control? Scientists argued. Their tech is peaceful. Their biology shows no signs of aggression. But what if they change their minds? Another officer pressed. Or what if someone else comes and we're defenseless because we trusted too much? Slowly, quietly, Earth began to prepare. Not for war with the Kalari, no one wanted that. But just in case. Old weapons factories reopened, now powered by clean energy. New ships were built, not for travel, but for defense. Engineers studied broken Kalari pods, not to copy their healing power, but to understand how they worked, so they could be stopped if needed. Corporations joined in. They called it reverse innovation. In labs hidden behind glass towers, teams took apart every scrap of alien tech they could find. Some tried to make better versions. Others tried to find weaknesses. A few even dreamed of selling Kalari-style machines for profit, though none dared say it out loud. The Kalari noticed. They always noticed. But they said nothing. That silence made things worse. In villages, people still left gifts for the sky. But in cities, news channels debated, are we safe? Do they have a plan? What do they really want? A famous writer published a book called The Debt. It became a bestseller. In it, he wrote, gratitude is a rope. At first, it lifts you up, but if you hold it too long, it becomes a noose. People read it and nodded. They felt the rope tightening. Even ordinary families felt it. A mother in Brazil told her son, be kind, but never forget what they gave us. A fisherman in Norway checked the sky every morning, not for weather, but for signs. Was that light too bright? Was that ship moving closer? The Kalari ships never moved closer. They stayed exactly where they had been for 10 years. But the human mind does not rest when it owes something it cannot repay. Religious leaders spoke of divine tests. Philosophers warned of the burden of grace. Teenagers joked about sky parents who saved Earth but never asked how it was doing. The jokes were funny, but the worry underneath was real. Then came the first incident. A small research drone built by a university flew too close to a Kalari ship. It wasn't armed. It only carried cameras and sensors. But the moment it crossed an invisible line, it shut down. Not destroyed, just turned off like a toy with dead batteries. It floated back to Earth gently as if placed there by careful hands. No message came. No warning. Just silence. That night panic spread. Not loud panic, but the quiet kind that lives in chests and whispers in ears. They can stop us any time, people said. They let us live. But they control everything. The truth was simpler. The Kalari had safety fields like fences around a garden. They didn't want to be touched, not out of fear but respect. But humans saw control, not care. Trust began to crack. Still, life went on. Crops grew. Babies were born. Music played in the streets. But beneath the surface, Earth was changing. The unity that had bloomed after the Great Gift was fading. Nations started guarding their rebuilt resources again. Old rivalries returned, dressed in new clothes, and always the question hung in the air. When will they ask for payment? No one knew. But everyone waited. The Kalari and their quiet ships watched it all. They saw the fear grow. They saw the kindness turn to suspicion. And in their deep ancient eyes a new sadness appeared, not for themselves but for humanity. They had given a gift meant to heal. But humans, shaped by pain and history, could not receive it without fear, so the Kalari stayed silent. They did not explain. They did not demand. They only waited, hoping that one day humanity would understand. Some debts are not meant to be repaid. Only honored, but on Earth, honor was not enough. Humans needed action. They needed to do something, anything, to balance the scales, and that need, quiet and growing, would soon change everything. The message came on a Tuesday. It was not loud. It did not shake the sky or burn through satellites. It arrived as a soft pulse of light, gentle as a sigh, and appeared on every screen on Earth at once. Phones, televisions, public boards, even wristbands. No one had time to block it. No one could stop it. One moment the world was going about its day. The next, every screen showed the same image. A Kalari elder, her skin dimmer than before, her eyes filled with a sorrow so deep it made people pause in the streets. Then she spoke. Not in words, but in feeling, clear, simple, and heavy. Our home is falling. The message showed stars. Then a planet, blue and green, wrapped in soft light like Earth once was. Then fire. Great black ships, sharp and jagged, tearing through the sky. Cities burning, forests turning to ash. The Kalari running, not fighting, just fleeing. Their ships were not built for war. They carried children, seeds, memories, not weapons. They are called the Vorath, the message continued. They take everything. They leave nothing alive. We will not fight. It is not our way. But if you wish to repay us, protect what we could not. The screen went dark. For 3 full minutes, the world was silent. Then chaos began. In government centers, alarms rang. Leaders called emergency meetings. Generals shouted. Scientists demanded data. Reporters ran through halls shouting into cameras. The Kalari are under attack. Alien war is coming. Earth must choose. But the real storm was inside people's hearts. Some felt fear. If the Vorath destroy the Kalari, who's next? Us? Others felt anger. Why should we risk our lives for them? They never asked us to. But many felt something else, something older and deeper. A promise made in silence 10 years ago, when clean water first flowed and children stopped coughing. A debt not written down but felt in the bones. We owe them, said a farmer in Kenya watching the message replay on his old tablet. They gave us life. Now they need us. But we're not soldiers, whispered a student in Seoul. We barely survived our own wars. Still, the question spread like wind through grass. What do we do? The United Earth Council, formed after the Great Gift to keep peace, met in Geneva. For 2 days, voices clashed. Some nations said no. We just rebuilt. We can't lose it all again. Others said yes. If we don't help, we're no better than the ones who let Earth burn. Then an old woman stood. She was from Bangladesh, once lost under rising seas, now living in a floating city built with Kalari help. She spoke slowly, her voice shaking but clear. They did not wait for us to be ready. They did not ask if we deserved it. They saw us drowning and pulled us out. Now they are drowning. What kind of people would we be if we turned away? No one answered. That night the vote was held. One by one, nations cast their choice, not by power, not by threat, but by conscience. In the end, it was not unanimous. But it was enough. Earth would fight, not for land, not for glory, not even for safety, but because someone had been kind to them when they had nothing, and now that someone needed help. Preparations began at once. Factories that once made healing pods now built shields and engines. Pilots trained in simulators. learning to fly ships that bent light and rode gravity waves. Engineers worked day and night combining human grit with Kalari design. They didn't copy the Kalari way. They made their own, faster, rougher, full of human fire. The Kalari sent no thanks. They sent no plans. They only sent star maps, paths to their dying world marked with danger zones and Vorath movements. It was all they could give. As launch day neared, people gathered in cities, villages, and spaceports. Parents hugged children goodbye. Friends made promises they weren't sure they could keep. Some cried. Some sang old songs. Others just stood in silence, looking up. A young pilot from Brazil kissed his little sister's forehead. "I'm going to say thank you," he told her. "But you're scared," she said. "Yes," he said. "But being scared doesn't mean you don't go." On the day of departure, hundreds of ships lifted from Earth. Not sleek and perfect like the Kalaris, but strong, patched together with hope and steel. They carried no flags, only a single symbol on their sides. A green leaf wrapped around a star. The Kalari watched from orbit. For the first time in years, one of their ships moved. It glided beside the human fleet, not leading, not commanding, just accompanying. A silent nod, a shared breath. As the fleet passed the moon, the last message from Earth went out. Not to the Kalari, not to the Vorath, but to all who would listen in the dark. We were saved. Now we stand. And with that, humanity flew into the unknown, not as victims, not as conquerors, but as friends who remembered a kindness. The galaxy had never seen anything like it, and far away, near a burning world, the Vorath sensed something new coming. Not fear, not greed, but something they did not understand. Something called loyalty. The human fleet arrived at the edge of Kalari space like a storm made of hope and steel. They were not many, just over 300 ships, small compared to the vast black armada of the Vorath. But they moved fast, sharp, and full of purpose. They did not wait for orders. They did not form neat lines like old war movies. They scattered, twisted, and struck like birds diving on a snake. The Vorath were huge. Their ships were jagged, covered in spikes and burning engines. They crushed planets, drained stars, and left behind only silence. They had never lost. They did not know how, but humans were different. They did not fight fair. They never had. One human ship, small and fast, flew straight at a Vorath destroyer, then split into 3 pieces. 2 were decoys, exploding in bright flashes. The third slipped behind the enemy, planted a device, and ran. Minutes later, the Vorath ship tore itself apart from the inside. In another battle, humans sent out old mining drones, harmless-looking machines, filled with noise. Not weapons, just sound. Songs, laughter, baby cries, ocean waves. The Vorath AI, built to hunt silence and order, went mad trying to understand the chaos. It froze. Human fighters shot it down while it was confused. On a broken moon, soldiers dug trenches not to hide, but to trap. They lured Vorath ground troops into tunnels, then collapsed them with old explosives. No fancy tech, just dirt, fire, and human cleverness. The Kalari watched from their last safe city, hidden under a mountain of crystal. They saw humans do what they refused to do, fight, bleed, and die for others. It hurt them to watch. Their hearts ached. But they also felt something new, awe. A young Kalari child asked, "Why do they risk so much for us?" An elder touched the child's head. Because they remember what it feels like to be saved. But saving came at a cost. Earth's fleet shrank with every battle. Ships vanished in fire. Pilots never came back. Mars, which had just begun to bloom with red flowers and clean domes, was found by Vorath scouts. They did not land. They dropped a single black bomb. The whole colony turned to glass in seconds. Millions gone. No warning, no mercy. Still, humans did not run. They sent more ships. They used broken Vorath parts to build new weapons. They turned asteroids into shields. They even used their own bodies as bait. Pilots flying damaged ships into enemy lines, knowing they would not return, just to give others time. One famous act became legend. A ship called the Last Leaf, named after Earth's symbol, was badly hurt. Its engines failed. Instead of surrendering, its crew sent out a final message. "Tell Earth we said thank you." Then they aimed their ship at a Vorath command center and flew straight in. The explosion blinded sensors for an hour. In that hour, 10 human ships escaped with Kalari refugees. News of this reached Earth. People did not cheer. They cried. Then they worked harder. Factories ran day and night. Children collected scrap metal. Old soldiers taught new pilots how to aim, how to hide, how to survive. Even artists helped. They painted ships with bright colors so the Vorath would waste time tracking them. Every person in their own way joined the fight. The Vorath began to change their plans. They slowed down. They sent scouts ahead. They avoided open fights. For the first time they were afraid, not of human weapons, but of human will. Humans did not care about winning cleanly. They cared about protecting. They would lose a battle to save one Kalari child. They would burn a ship to shield a seed vault. They fought like parents defending their young, wild, desperate, and full of love. The Kalari, who had lived for thousands of years in peace, finally understood something. Peace is precious, but it must sometimes be defended by those who are willing to break it. Months passed. The war did not end, but the tide turned. The Vorath pulled back from the Kalari homeworld. They still held many systems, but the heart was safe for now. The human fleet was half gone. Only 140 ships remained. Many were patched with tape, hope, and spare parts. Pilots slept in their seats. Food ran low, but they stayed. Back on Earth, the cost was heavy. Cities mourned. Empty chairs sat at dinner tables. Schools held quiet minutes for the lost. But no one said it was a mistake. No one asked, "Why did we go?" Because they all remembered the day the sky healed. Now they were the healers. One night, a Kalari elder sent a message to the human commander. A woman from Nigeria, her face lined with worry and sleepless nights. "You did not have to do this," the elder said. The commander looked at the stars, then at a photo of her daughter back on Earth. "Yes," she said softly, "we did." And in that moment, the debt was no longer a weight. It was a bridge, but the Vorath were not gone. They were watching, learning. And far away in the dark between galaxies, they were building something new. The war was not over, but for now, the Kalari world breathed again, and humanity, once saved, had become the shield. No one celebrated. There was no time, they only prepared for what came next. The Vorath did not return. Not in fire, not in ships, not in words. They simply vanished beyond the edge of known space like shadows retreating from light. The war was over, not with a bang, but with a long, tired silence. On the Kalari homeworld, the last fires were put out. Crystals once cracked by bombs began to glow again. Children played in gardens rebuilt from memory. The Kalari mourned their dead as all beings do. But they also looked up at the sky with new eyes. Eyes that now understood sacrifice. The human fleet came home. What remained of it anyway? Only 83 ships returned to Earth orbit. Some limped on one engine. Others carried wounded, both body and soul. When they landed, there were no parades. No cheering crowds. People stood quietly in the streets, holding candles or flowers, faces wet with tears they did not try to hide. They knew the cost. Billions had died. Mars was a grave. The moon bore scars from orbital strikes. Entire families were gone. But Earth still turned. The air was still clean. The rivers still ran clear. And that, everyone knew, was because humans had gone to fight for someone else. The Kalari sent one final message. Not to governments, not to armies, but to every person on Earth. It was simple. You did not owe us this. But you gave it anyway. We will never forget. Then they left. Their great ships rose from orbit not in anger, but in sorrow and respect. They did not say where they were going. Maybe to heal, maybe to hide, maybe to watch from farther away. But as they faded into the stars, a strange thing happened across the galaxy. Fear spread, not fear of the Vorath. Fear of humans. On 1,000 worlds, in 1,000 languages, the same whisper passed from mouth to mouth. They repaid kindness with war. Species that had ignored Earth for centuries now studied it closely. Traders avoided human space. Diplomats rewrote their reports. Old empires that once saw humans as weak now saw them as dangerous. Why? Because humans had done something no one expected. They had been given a gift, and instead of hoarding it, they had used it to protect the giver. They had taken grace and turned it into courage. They had looked at a debt of love and paid it in blood. To the galaxy, that made no sense. Most civilizations traded in power, fear, or profit. But humans, they traded in loyalty. And loyalty, when backed by ships and sacrifice, was terrifying. Even the Kalari, safe in their hidden refuge, felt this new fear. Not of humans, but for them. They had seen what Earth became when it remembered a kindness. What would it become if it ever felt betrayed? Back on Earth, no one spoke of glory. People planted trees over mass graves. They named schools after lost pilots. In small towns, elders told children the story not as a war tale, but as a lesson. When someone helps you, you don't just say thanks. You become someone who helps others. The world changed again, but quietly. Nations shared more. Wars between humans became rare, almost shameful. After what we did out there, people said, how can we fight each other over land or money? Technology once used for war was turned to healing. Old battle drones now planted forests. Warships became transport for food and medicine. The same minds that built traps for the Vorath now built clean water systems for dry villages. But the galaxy watched. Scouts from unknown species circled the edge of human space, careful not to get too close. They saw Earth's lights, its green fields, its quiet cities, and they saw the scars of war beneath the peace. They saw a species that could be gentle, and also unstoppable, and they shuddered, not because humans were strong, but because humans cared. Caring in a cold universe was the rarest and most frightening thing of all. Years later, a young girl on Earth asked her grandmother, "Are we heroes?" The old woman looked at the stars, then at the garden they were tending together. "No," she said, "we just remembered how to be human, and that was enough." The galaxy never attacked Earth again. Not because it was afraid of human weapons, but because it was afraid of what those weapons stood for. A promise that if you help a human, they will never forget. And if you hurt someone they love, they will come for you, not with hate, but with the quiet, terrible weight of a debt repaid. So the stars stayed quiet. Earth healed. And in the night sky, if you looked closely, you could still see a faint blue glow. Sometimes near the moon, sometimes near Mars. No one knew if it was a Kalari ship watching over them, or just a memory. But humans kept looking up, not in fear, in hope, and somewhere, far away, the Vorath waited. They had learned one thing: never again underestimate a species that turns gratitude into a weapon. For now, peace held. But the galaxy would never see humans the same way again, and that was the true cost of the debt.